Hey there, I'm Troddle1, and I like computer science. In fact, I like it so much that I decided to take out a ridiculously priced student loan in order to obtain a degree in computer science. So unsurprisingly, I also make videos about computer science. Kinda. There's also reptiles here.
Hey there, my name is Idex. Idex Lagarto. That's my full name. And I'm Junior Trova! And nobody likes you.
Anyway, the Steam Summer Sale was last July, and during that sale, RPG Maker 2003 was on sale for literally $2. For whatever reason, I decided to do a Discord poll on whether or not I should buy RPG Maker 2003, despite the software being almost 20 years old. And then I went and bought it without looking at the poll results because $2 is only only more than a quarter's worth of how much the government of America thinks people deserve? Anyway, RPG Maker 2003 has a sort of programming language based on events that objects in the game can do. This video was originally going to be about making a computer in RPG Maker 2003, like how people made computers in Conway's Game of Life, Mario Maker, Magic the Gathering, and Minecraft. Now, of course, I could be silly and just do something like this. But that would make you guys in the audience super angry. So I'm going to be making something that is considered an actual computer based off of how a computer is actually defined in RPG Maker 2003. Eventually. But first we need to figure out what a computer is in the first place. That's the entirety of this video. Hooray!
Troddle, that's stupid easy. This will literally be your shortest video ever. Just ask the dictionary. Ow!
Anyway, the Cambridge Dictionary defines a computer as an electronic device that can store large amounts of information and be given sets of instructions to organize and change it very quickly. Oh.
There we go. Video over.
Well, Cambridge's definition is incomplete in several ways. Let's go over a few of them. Number 1, large amounts of data. Have you seen computers in American public schools? Number 2, very quickly, have you seen computers in American public schools? And number 3, the definition's British, so it's wrong by default. And besides, dictionaries can only define things in short 1 to 2 sentence definitions, and that may not capture the entire nuance of what something actually is. For example, the Magic the Gathering computer isn't electronic, so it doesn't fit this definition. Even though the Magic the Gathering computer is totally a computer.
You're dumb. You're just setting unreachable standards.
No, I'm not. Anyway, to really get into the true nature of computers, take that thing you typically recognize as a computer, grab a chainsaw, and open it carefully with a screwdriver. Open the computer with the screwdriver, not the chainsaw. Don't even touch the chain. The chainsaw was a joke. Anyway, inside the computer you will see a motherboard with a CPU, RAM, a hard drive, maybe, but honestly probably a graphics card, and a power supply. Each of these things do different things. Because they're different things, why did I put that into the script? For example, the hard drive houses all of your files, the power supply lets the computer turn on, the graphics card processes graphics for your video games and sometimes wastes fossil fuel energy mining for virtual nothing, the RAM stores temporary data that disappears when the computer's shut off, the CPU crunches numbers, and the motherboard ties all of these things together into a cohesive unit. Computer!
So,
those are the things that make up a computer.
Cool.
Yeah, you can even take all of the components, minus the graphics card and hard drive, replacing the hard drive with an SD card, and place them onto a single chip. This $40 chip is called the Raspberry Pi, a small, inexpensive, yet fully functional computer that can even run Linux. Now, while every part of the computer is important on its own, the most important part of the computer is the Central Processing Unit, or CPU. The CPU is made up of millions of tiny things called transistors. A transistor can either let current flow through it, or it can block the current from flowing through it. These are given simplified names of 1 and 0. Since there are two options, they form a binary system. In fact, it's so binary that we refer to it as binary code. Wait. So you're telling me that my entire laptop is just a bunch of light switches?
That makes no sense! Well, that's just how it works.
Impossible! How can light switches do complicated things?
Well, they can't really do complicated things on their own, but many of them together can. For example, this is an AND gate. It takes in two inputs as binary digits, or bits, and will only output a 1 if both inputs are 1. This one over here, meanwhile, is a NOT gate. It simply reverses what you put into it. So 1 becomes 0, and 0 becomes 1. And lastly, here is an OR gate. It's like an AND gate in that it takes in 2 bits as input, but it outputs a 1 if either of the inputs is a 1. Well, okay, but still, those are still simple. How do they do complicated things? Well, take a look at this.
This thing takes in 2 inputs and returns a 1 if exactly one of the inputs is a 1. This is called an XOR gate, and we made it out of the previous 3 gate types. And if we keep going and going and going, we can create more and more complicated gates until we can create really cool things. Exactly, IDEX.
Well then, that's kinda cool. Well, now that I know that, I guess I'm an expert at computers now.
The processor also has groups of transistors called modules, which do different things. For example, there is a module called the adder, which knows how to add numbers together, and a module called the multiplexer that knows how to choose which of 2 options to select based on an input. The processor also contains these things called registers, which contain temporary data. And to tell the processor what to do, there is a program made out of machine code, which is just long strings of bits. Using these, we can assemble a single-cycle processor. Like this one that I took from somewhere else, because if I were to try drawing it myself, I'd probably screw up in some way. Because yeah, it's kinda complicated. Now start programming it.
Ugh, the machine code's so ugly though. It's just a bunch of numbers.
Yeah, it does suck. That's why humans invented programming languages. The lowest level of which is assembly, which is just machine code, but with readable words instead of opaque numbers. Oh, but it will run each instruction through the entire processor one at a time though. One after the last. Doing one at a time. Not exactly. Don't get me started on that one. Too bad I started. It basically stretches itself into regions that do parts of each operation, and each region happens at pretty much the same time. This is known as pipelining. Of course, there's this wonderful fact that you could, for example, jump to a faraway location in the code, and suddenly everything else in the pipeline just becomes garbage that you should not have run. So when you do a jump, you might need to add no-op instructions. And that's one of the reasons why processors have no-op instructions. But yeah, that was a very spotty and not at all thorough tour of what a processor is. And I guess by extension of that, what a computer is. I mean, the processor is the main part of the computer, so there we go. Neat! So a computer is just a device with a processor? And that's what it meant since the term was first used in 1613! Ah! The computer knows where it is at all times. It knows this because it knows where it isn't. By subtracting where it is from where it isn't, or from where it isn't from where it is, whichever is greater,
it obtains a difference, or deviation. The guidance subsystem uses deviation to generate corrective commands to drive the computer from a position where it is to a position where it isn't. And... OW! IDEX? Junior Troopa's supposed to be the one torturing me in this video, not you.
Sorry, that joke was just going on way too long. And it wasn't funny. Hey, I liked it.
Anyway, a long time ago, some random human was probably going out to go get fruit from some forbidden tree or something, so they grabbed one fruit, but then something magical happened. They grabbed another. Aha! 2 fruit! And it follows that one more fruit is... many fruit. That's right, early humans had only 3 numbers. 1, 2, and many. That's the same number of numbers that Tokipona officially has. That works great!
Yeah, but it sucks though. I mean, just look at it.
This is many, and even this is many.
But they're all different numbers. This is so useless.
And yeah, as record keeping became more and more complicated, 1 too many became totally unusable. And so, enter the Mesopotamians, Sargon, Hammurabi, Ashurbanipal, and Gilgamesh. The correct term for them is Sumerians, by the way. The Sumerians developed a system of counting that was base 60 for whatever reason. Of course, counting by hands is kinda difficult, and Sanskrit isn't exactly nice. So someone, who by the way is completely lost to history, came up with a way of counting based on moving stones around. The abacus! The abacus spread all over civilization, except towards that part that was blocked by a big stupid ocean. For many ancient civilizations, the abacus was this hot new device, the iPhone of the ancient world, if you will. The Romans had an abacus, and I'm pretty sure all of you have seen Roman numerals before, so we'll use that one. Oh, and before I get to describing the Roman abacus, just for a sec, when talking about Roman numerals, forget about that whole 4 equals IV thing. It's kinda dumb. For 4, just 4 eyes. This will make understanding the abacus much easier. So each column of the abacus represents a place value. We got the 1s, the 10s, the 100s, and the 1000s. So this abacus can go up to 9,999. In the I row, these 4 stones down here, called calculi if you want to get specific and cool, represent the I's. The one up here, meanwhile, is the V, or the 5. Each place value works the same way.
So, over here in the X column, the one on top is the L, while the 4 down here are the 4 X's.
Yeah, that's right. Using this, we can make our numbers.
Well, this is kinda dumb. It just lets you write numbers differently, and in a way that's actually less nice in my opinion than Roman numerals!
Well, what if I said that it actually was nicer? For example, if you want to multiply a number by 10, you just shift everything over to the left. To divide by 10, you just shift everything to the right.
Heh. I feel smart just for pretending to know how to use this.
Moving on, in 1901, a big metal block of stuff was recovered from an ancient Greek shipwreck dating back to around the 1st century BC. This block of stuff was found to be a device called the Antikythera? You know what, I'm just gonna have Google Translate say it.
Antikythera mechanism.
An analog device that was able to accurately predict astronomical events decades in advance. This device is considered by many to be the first computer, because it computes a complicated thing all on its own. Wait. Why isn't the abacus the first computer then, if it came out way earlier than this thing? Well, because the abacus isn't a computer. It's just a tool. A mathematical hammer, if you will. But then, why is this a computer? Well, according to my definition that we'll get to later, by the way, it's not. But people call it a computer because it computes something that would be fairly difficult for humans to do, all on its own, and it does so accurately. That means the ancient Greeks were actually way more advanced than we give them credit for. which is fairly advanced for the time, by the way. Many more computation devices started to be designed and used as time progressed, such as star charts and mechanical calendars. Eventually, though, the logarithm was discovered by William Oughtred, which led to a really cool tool being developed. A logarithm is basically the exponent you would need to apply to a number, usually 10e or 10 but a different base, in order to get a specific result. So, with the base of 10, the logarithm of 100 is 2, since you need to raise 10 to the second power in order to get 100. However, if you add two logarithms together, that's the same as the logarithm of the products of the two things inside of them. If you then exponentiated this sum, you would get the product of the two numbers you took the logarithm of. Using this principle, Oughtred created something called the slide rule, which used logarithms to assist in calculating multiplication, division, and square roots. But that's not a computer! That's just a tool for humans to use again! Where's the computer? Right here. That's right, a computer at first was literally just a term that meant a person who does computations. A mathematician or an astronomer would often hire a computer to calculate those long, tedious things that nobody really wants to do, like how we use computers today. Though, unlike computers today, yelling at them to go faster because they're a waste of time and to stop giving you the hourglass-shaped middle finger would be seen as unethical and bad working conditions. The job of computer became a profession on its own, rather than just a side gig done by astronomers in training, around World War I. Usually, a human computer was a member of the societal category built around the female sex, also known as a woman. Fun fact, the plural is this, and while you would expect it to be pronounced women, it's actually pronounced women because English sucks.
I guess they also needed the I in fish.
Women did this job because most of the members of the societal category built around the male sex, the men, were off fighting in World War I. So, large numbers of women with math degrees on both sides in both world wars did complex calculations on things such as navigation, missile trajectories, and calculating the ways to get a giant ball of atoms to have all of its atoms ripped apart at the same time to unleash as much destructive energy as possible. But yeah, the profession of computer generally involved sitting in a room, looking at charts of numbers, and doing lots and lots and lots and lots of tedious calculations. Though they did use slide rules, and when they eventually did come around, calculators. So the job of a computer was what I thought a mathematician was when I was 6.
Well, how did anyone know that these calculations were accurate? Was it just a miracle that every calculation done by a human computer was correct? Or was that some part of the math degree?
The truth is, they weren't always accurate calculations, because they were people. Which is why they often had several groups of people doing the same calculation at the same time, and if the answer happened to be the same, it was probably right.
Interesting. And you want to know something else interesting? You know how those human computers were mostly women? Listen to this iPhone.
Hi, I'm Siri.
Listen to this Android phone.
Help, I'm trapped in a phone.
Amazon Alexa, Cortana, even flipping GLaDOS. Computers have, for whatever reason, just gone from being real women to digital women. I guess for all of you weirdos to slobber over.
Interesting website. That I'm sure that you, as an unattractive lizard who gets no bitches, totally don't frequently use. You say you have a girlfriend. Data says she's just lying to you while waiting for the jock character to appear on Truttle's channel. He hasn't shown up yet, because our research shows that Trottle is a lazy disappointment.
Wait a minute. Wait just a minute. Wait a gosh ding dang darn diddly darn minute.
When did computers go from being people who compute at things to being like laptops and stuff? Well, that happened around World War II. The war may have ended when the United States dropped the bombs, but it was shortened greatly when cryptoanalysts at Bletchley Park dropped the bomb. It's got an E at the end, don't know why. But before we can get to that, we need to talk about the attempts to create universal machines that could solve any problem you threw at them. And how they really couldn't. So, mathematicians in the past were really interested in solving polynomials. Probably because it's hard as balls. So, this guy named Charles Babbage designed the difference engine in the 1820s. The difference engine was able to calculate the solution to a 7th-order polynomial and create a stamp of the result, which could then be put onto paper for future reference. On these giant tables of polynomial solutions that you would buy as books. Now, Babbage wasn't the first person to make or design a machine that solved math problems, but he did do something cool. He was the first one to attempt to generalize the machine from the difference engine that could only solve a polynomial expression to a machine that could solve any problem you throw at it.
Hold on. Any problem? As in, any at all?
Yeah, including those that aren't necessarily math problems. The analytical engine would have read programs on punch cards, where it would, based on the holes punched on each instruction, write to memory, read from memory, do arithmetic, or change where on the punch card the machine was reading in order to do control flow. Almost like...
Holy crap. That was basically a processor.
Charles Babbage also enlisted the help of Countess Ada Lovelace, who wrote some notes on the analytical engine. One of these notes was about Bernoulli numbers, which are a sequence of rational numbers that occur in various places, such as the Taylor series of the tangent function. Why no, I don't really know much about them, why do you ask? But what I do know about them is that Ada Lovelace, in one of her notes, wrote about a method in which you could use the analytical engine to calculate the 8th Bernoulli number. And because this was the first algorithm written for the first specification of a computer, Ada Lovelace was the first computer programmer. But the algorithm that she gave was actually incorrect. One of the variables was in the wrong order. So she also wrote the first computer bug, meaning that she definitely was the first computer programmer.
Whoa, cool. So, where's the analytical engine now?
Nowhere.
What?
Yeah, it wasn't actually built, it was just designed. But still, for being the first to design a general computer, Babbage is considered by many to be the father of the computer.
So if he didn't actually build one, who actually invented the computer?
That's debatable. For example, if you consider the inventor of the computer to be the first person to actually build a working computer, then the inventor of the computer is Konrad Zuse. He built the Z3, which became operational in Berlin in 1941. Unfortunately for the Z3, but definitely fortunately for the rest of us, the first Turing-complete general-purpose computer that was ever made wasn't really considered to be important by the Nazi government and its leader with bad fashion sense.
Turing-complete? What's that mean?
Oh, that. We'll get to that later. But the Z3 wasn't as advanced as modern-day computers, since the way it did conditional branches was literally by checking all of its options. It also got destroyed by the Allies in 1943, so... oops. Anyway, where's Junior Troopa? It's been a second.
Oh, he's over in the corner.
Hey, buddy, what's wrong?
Nothing! Go away!
That's not gonna help any of us. Just tell me what's wrong. I thought that I was pretty good at computers before I was dragged into this video. Now apparently I'm just stupid! No, you're not. You're just experiencing the Dunning-Kruger effect. The what now? Well, and I know this graphic isn't exactly accurate, but it illustrates the point. When you learn a thing, your confidence immediately spikes up to a peak, before it sharply comes back down once you realize that, shocker, you aren't an expert yet. And then it goes back up once you actually do become an expert. Normally, when I see this, it's always in the context of someone criticizing someone else for saying we're doing something stupid. For example, the Earth curves at about a rate of 8 inches downward per mile. Using this, someone might, for example, attempt to approximate the Earth's curvature using a parabola, and conclude that they shouldn't be able to see something that they actually should. The next logical step is, of course, stating that the Earth is a pizza. The problem? Earth's actually not curved like a parabola, so a parabolic curve wouldn't exactly work. So this person has some knowledge, but not enough to avoid making a silly-looking mistake. And they also have really high confidence, despite their lack of knowledge. This is the scenario when everyone likes to bring up the Dunning-Kruger effect. What I hear less often, though, is how much this big drop in confidence sucks. Because it sucks. And I experienced it. I thought I was so great at writing code when I was in high school, and I made a game in C++ that, for some reason I couldn't put my finger on, started eating more and more RAM as it was left open, until it literally crashed the computer due to eating all the RAM. I get to college, and then I learned that I was creating a bunch of pointers, storing them into a vector, and then when I took them out of the vector, I wasn't deleting them. So all of the pointers were becoming orphaned, and as we all know, orphans are a drain on the system and must be removed. So that was embarrassing. It basically knocked me directly into that pit of despair just immediately. But what's nice about the peak of that graph is that it's easy to be there. It's comfortable. And all you need to do to stay there is not learn anything new. But that's a terrible idea. So what you're saying is, ignorance may seem like bliss, but that's a lie? Yeah, exactly. And this tangent about the Dunning-Kruger effect has gone on way too long, and this video is probably exemplifying it in millions of different ways with me being at the peak of Mount Stupid right now, so it was dumb to bring it up. But anyway, let's get to the part of the video that I was actually looking forward to, finally. The Church-Turing Thesis. Is this going to be a different part, or am I gonna do the Scarlet Fire thing? So, in 1928, David Hilbert and Wilhelm Ackermann proposed the Entscheidungsproblem, or the decision problem. Basically, it asked, is there a machine that can determine if a math problem is solvable or not? If so, what is that machine? And if not, why not? In 1936, Alonzo Church ended up answering that question by creating a very simple system of mathematical logic called lambda calculus. I made a full video on lambda calculus, so if you care, go watch that. But quickly, lambda calculus basically defines a way of representing everything as functions. A function takes in an input and replaces all instances of a specified variable with that input. This is called a beta reduction. A lambda calculus expression is considered to be in its normal form if it cannot be reduced any further. The identity function I, for example, will reduce to its normal form like so. So, every problem has a normal form, right? No! This function here, called omega, will never result in normal form, since a beta reduction done onto omega yields omega again. So some functions have normal forms, and some functions don't. Wait. So if some functions reduce and some don't, how the heck are we supposed to know which functions have normal forms or not? That's the neat part. We don't. Ugh! Why? Well, imagine we have a function p that returns a true function if any given input x has a normal form, and a false function if it doesn't. We don't care how it does this, we just care that it does. Now the true boolean is actually a function that takes in two arguments, t and f, and will return t and discard f. False, meanwhile, will return f and discard t. So really, true is just a function that takes in two arguments and returns the first, while false will return the second. Now we can take p and use it to create another function, o. O is defined like this, where it will take a function x as input and run it into p. It will then return the identity function, which by the way always has a normal form, if p of x is false, and it will return the omega function, which will never have a normal form if p of x is true.
Ah! So whatever form p predicts x has, O will output the opposite. Neat.
But here's the question, what happens if we try running O onto itself?
That's easy. If O is normal, then it will return omega. But since O equals omega now, that means that O is not... Okay. So O is not normal now. So it will return I, which makes it... Truddle, what's the meaning of this?
What's the meaning of it? Why, it's a problem that cannot be solved. Whatever O predicts O will do will always be wrong. Therefore, the Entscheidungsproblem has been proven unsolvable in lambda calculus, since the very existence of a function in lambda calculus that checks if another one has a normal form or not is impossible. But you might be asking, what if the flaw is just in lambda calculus? Well, that's actually not the case either. But before we can talk about that, we need a brand new type of machine, and factories with machines in them, so we can make a lot of products real fast. So let's get to defining that machine. This one's important. So let's say we have this node here. Call it closed locked door, and it's where we start. Now imagine we try to open this door.
It doesn't work!
That's because it's a closed locked door, you stupid dumb idiot moron. But at least you know you're supposed to pull, so we don't have to bother with you pushing. So the arrow for pull just loops back around to closed locked door. Because it's closed and locked, and therefore it stays closed.
Hey, look what I found! A key! Hey, now it's unlocked.
Correct. This arrow, unlike Junior Troopa's stupid dumb arrow, goes to another node, closed unlocked door. Now if you try to pull on the lever, see what happens.
Hey, it opened!
Yeah! Now that the door's unlocked, you can go from closed unlocked door to open unlocked door. Now, to stop stupid dumb intruders from coming in, you would ideally close the door again and then lock it again. This diagram that we just made for this door is called a finite state machine. Finite state machines can branch to many nodes, and some of them, like, say, open unlocked door, will allow the state machine to end with an accept state. If the finite state machine reaches a dead end and is not in an accept state, it is in a reject state. But there's a major problem with finite state machines. They must have a distinct state for every possible situation. So a finite state machine that, for example, would want to add two numbers together would not really be able to exist, since there are an infinite number of possible combinations of numbers to add together. This brings us to a guy named Alan Matheson Turing, everyone's favorite gay mathematician, who is the 17th cousin of the guy who would later play him in a movie. He knew that there was a better type of theoretical machine out there, so he designed the Turing machine. A Turing machine is basically a finite state machine, but with an endless tape of memory that can be changed by the states. This lets the Turing machine easily remember what has been done earlier. For example, while addition requires potentially thousands or millions of states on a finite state machine, even if there are caps on the numbers you can add together, writing an adder is actually reasonable to make in a Turing machine, since it can store data, as shown in this example, which can add two binary numbers together. Although I didn't give it the ability to understand integer overflow, so, don't do integer overflow here.
So, this can solve every problem, right?
I mean, there's gotta be a way to solve everything, right?
Right!
No.
Well, why don't they just make something where every problem can be solved then? Because it's hard? Well, hard doesn't mean impossible! True, but it just might actually be impossible. What can a Turing machine not solve?
Well, that's pretty much the exact same thing that lambda calculus cannot solve. But here, it's called the halting problem. Since a Turing machine can write its results to tape, you could actually use a Turing machine as part of another Turing machine. For the halting problem, a Turing machine must decide whether or not another Turing machine will halt, or if it will loop forever. So let's just say, hypothetically, that we have this. H is some black box Turing machine that returns true if the input halts, and false if the input doesn't halt. Again, like in the lambda calculus example, we don't care how this works, we're just saying that it does. We can now use this to create O, which will use H to do the opposite of its result. If H says that the input will halt, O loops. If H says that the input will loop, O halts. Now again, what happens if we run O on itself?
Well, that's easy. If O will loop,
then H will be false and O will halt.
So if O loops, O halts. But wait, O cannot loop if it... Ah! It's this stupid thing again! What the heck are you doing?
Showing that some problems on a Turing machine are undecidable. Just to make sure, by the way, you are able to write code, right? Yeah. I've pretty much only been receiving attention on your channel and on your other channel for like several years now, since Nintendo's abandoned me as a character.
So I've picked some stuff up.
Well then, Troopa, here's a challenge. Write a program that determines if another program is a Hello World program. That's it.
What? Dude, that just sounds so easy.
Yeah, it does. Chupa, let's do this.
Good luck! And if you do it, I'll give both of you your own series on this channel.
What? Come on, IDEX, we gotta make this super easy program now. It still isn't working. Trottle!
Oh, hi. Yeah, that one's unsolvable too.
What?
Yeah, here's why. So, for the sake of argument, assume you finished. Assume you have W, which determines if an input Turing machine X is also a Hello World program, and is literally what your task was. We can also create a new Turing machine, T, that takes in an input Turing machine X, runs it without storing the answer anywhere, and then prints Hello World. So T is only a Hello World program if X halts. Are you starting to see something interesting yet? If we use W on T of X, you have solved the halting problem! Hooray!
What? But I thought you couldn't solve the halting problem. So how are we solving it?
You're not! And you can't! Which means that you cannot make W, meaning I just wasted loads and loads and loads of your time. Heh.
So, since you can't solve the decision problem in lambda calculus, and you can't solve it with a Turing machine, can you solve it with anything?
No! While Alonzo Church and Alan Turing published their findings separately, both in 1936, Turing eventually ended up studying under Church at Princeton. There, Church and Turing realized something. Hey, Alan? Yeah? These two things are the same, aren't they? Yeah, they sure look that way. And so the Church-Turing Thesis was born. The Turing machine is considered to be a universal machine, sorry Alonzo Church, and anything that reduces to a Turing machine is called Turing complete. Lambda calculus is Turing complete, and so is C, and so was the Z3, and so was the Babbage analytical engine, and so is the computer that you are using to watch this obnoxiously long video right now. So are humans, maybe? Possibly? Can Turing complete things be sentient? Maybe? And so, a computer is any system that can reduce to a Turing machine. And that's why you can make a computer in Magic the Gathering. You literally made a Turing machine. That only works if the deck is in the right order, which shuffling it basically guarantees that it's not. And RPG Maker 2003 is probably Turing complete. I did not check before making this video. And yeah, I didn't forget about that.
But was that stuff actually proven?
No, the Church-Turing Thesis was just never shown to be wrong. And the Turing machine has been the most universal machine that we've had for about 100 years. But if you manage to prove the Church-Turing Thesis, or find a machine that's more powerful than a Turing machine, then good job. But make sure to put Trottle 1 on your research paper, so that they know that I helped. Yeah. Okay then, let me just add that to my wall of mathematical things to prove before I die, and... Wait a sec. Why do I have this?
It's because you're a nerd. Duh. What? No, I'm not! Yes, you are. Dude, you literally learned magic one time, and enough biochemistry to give yourself bat wings. All for what? To defeat some random plumber? Really? You want me to believe that you just don't like learning cool things for the sake of it? Not to mention you're literally on a YouTube channel about weird computer science.
I was brought here against my will, you jerk. And so, well, I'm a nerd now. What do I need to do? Start wearing glasses?
If they were prescribed to you by a doctor, then... yeah? You were prescribed glasses, weren't you?
Yes. Oh crap, I look ugly now, don't I?
No, you don't. You look fine.
Really? Hey guys, sorry to disrupt the moment, but holy crap, Germany just declared war on Poland and it's 1939 again. Here's a fun game. Find where exactly in the video I developed a cold. But anyway, shortly after Turing developed his machine and realized it was universal, a frickin' war broke out in Europe, with his home country of Great Britain as one of the major players. Germany was sending all of their top-secret messages over easy-to-pick-up radio waves, but they were using a secret code nobody could understand. But, in order to keep them even more private, they encoded them in another secret code that nobody could understand. A cryptology system. What's that? Cryptology systems started out when Julius Caesar shifted some letters in the alphabet to other positions in order to hide a message. This worked fine when everyone was illiterate, but by the 1930s, people could read, and would easily be able to crack that. So Germany started using the Enigma cipher, which was way more sophisticated. An Enigma machine had two sections, a keyboard to type on, and a lamp board that returned the scrambled message. Typing the letter onto the keyboard caused the corresponding encrypted letter to pop up on the lamp board. Putting in a plain text message scrambled the message, and putting the scrambled message back into the Enigma machine turned it back into plain text. Messages were scrambled using a system of rotors and wire connections. How many combinations to set up the machine were there? This many! And the Nazis changed which settings they were using daily, according to a list held by only top Nazi officials. So then, it's unbreakable? The Germans thought so, which is why they used Enigma to encode even their most top-secret messages. Which again, they just played over the radio, since without the secret codes, the messages were just gibberish. Eventually though, at Bletchley Park, England, cryptologists, including Alan Turing, worked on breaking this code. Turing, using his knowledge of machines, created the Bombe, which was a machine that tried out as many combinations as it could, way faster than a human could, and checked them against something that they already knew. But they already knew? Like what? I thought they were trying to figure out what the messages meant. Well, there was something that was in pretty much every message. And once I tell you what that something is, it becomes obvious.
Yeah, their narcissistic leader decided to force everyone to announce their loyalty to him in place of saying hello or goodbye. So pretty much all of their communication had that phrase somewhere.
And even if a message didn't end that way, another message sent that day probably did. Great job, guys. Real master race stuff there. Which meant that all Alan Turing and his colleagues at Bletchley Park needed to do was to run the bomb searching for Heil Hitler, and then bada bing bada boom, they got that day's Enigma settings. And then the Allies could literally know all of the Axis's plans. But the Allies, of course, had to make sure not to act too swiftly, or else the Axis might change their encryption system again. The research at Bletchley Park, though, is widely considered to have shortened World War II by several years, and to have saved at least 14 million lives. But, after the war, all information about it was kept secret until many years later. And then it did come out, and then a biopic that's actually not all that accurate was made. Still a good movie, though. So if The Imitation Game is available on your country's Netflix, I'd recommend watching it. 9 out of 10 stars. Oh, and by the way, how Great Britain treated Alan Turing after this was just plain awful. If you don't want to hear about really sickening homophobia, skip to this timestamp, because it's honestly disgusting. Yeah, as I'm pretty sure many of you know, Alan Turing was gay, which was, at the time, illegal in Great Britain. So he was convicted of a crime, without an actual victim, in 1952, and was forced to undergo chemical castration. This, unsurprisingly, caused him to spiral into depression. He committed suicide at 41 by poisoning himself with a cyanide-laced apple. This is honestly depressing, but the Queen posthumously pardoned him in 2013. But after that, something called the Alan Turing Law eventually came into effect, and as a result, everyone that was still serving jail time for homosexuality was pardoned in 2017. Which is far too late, by the way. Anyway, back to the fun stuff. Sorry about that. It just had to be mentioned in a video about Alan Turing. So, whenever someone says, "I made a computer in Magic the Gathering," or "computer in Mario Maker," now you know what they're actually referring to. They are referring to a system that can be reduced to a Turing machine. A Turing machine being a theoretical, universal machine that uses a finite state machine to modify a tape. So that means that a computer is a system that can simulate a finite state machine that modifies an infinite tape. Or a computer is something that is Turing complete. Hooray! Oh, and before you do that obvious thing of making the Turing machine stronger by adding another tape, you should know that a single infinite tape is actually the same as two infinite tapes, because if you put tape 1 on the odds and tape 2 on the evens of a single tape, you'd actually have the same number of cells. Why yes, this does imply that there are the same number of even numbers as there are whole numbers. This is because there are the same number of even numbers as there are whole numbers. If you disagree, you're stupid.
So, are we getting to the part with RPG Maker 2003 now?
Yeah, no.
What?
Yeah, that's gonna be next video, because this video is already too long. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time! This video was a mistake. Maybe I should actually give myself a frickin' topic before making a video next time.